This account was given to me in the autumn of 1887 at the dinner table of Sir Robert Calmsley, who had known the Duke of Ashford since their school years, and who did not, as a rule, tell stories that made him look slow to understand. He made an exception in this case. He said that he told it because it was accurate, and because the accuracy was instructive, and because he had been repeating it incorrectly for 2 years before he had occasion to tell it to the Duchess herself, at which point she had corrected 3 details and added a 4th that changed the meaning of the whole. I have set it down as he gave it to me with her corrections. In the spring of 1882, the Duke of Ashford attended a county dinner at Harlewick Hall, a moderate occasion, perhaps 40 guests, the kind of gathering at which attendance was a matter of courtesy rather than preference. Among the guests that evening was Miss Marion Reeve, 23, the eldest daughter of a country solicitor from the village of Aldwick. She had no connections to speak of, no fortune, and no particular acquaintance at the table. She was seated by the particular unkindness of chance, or possibly by the deliberate unkindness of the hostess, at the far end of the table from the principal company, beside the elderly clergyman who had fallen asleep in his soup on 2 prior occasions, and beside the young man from the municipal surveying office who had been invited to be agreeable and had proved to be neither agreeable nor present in any meaningful way. Sir Robert said, "I did not notice her at all at dinner," which tells you everything about the situation. What Sir Robert had also failed to notice, being at the other end of the table in more interesting company, was that the Duke of Ashford had noticed her. Specifically, the Duke had, at some point during the soup course, caught the woman's eye across the table. She had been looking at a small sketch she had made in the margin of the evening's printed program. A quick study of the centerpiece arrangement, anatomically precise, the proportions correct in a way that indicated practice. When the Duke looked across, she had glanced up and seen him looking. She did not color or look away. She looked back at the sketch and continued. He noticed the sketch. He looked at it for a moment. He returned to his conversation. He spoke to her across the table at the midpoint of the main course. Not directly. He asked the table at large whether anyone had studied the arrangement of the centerpiece, which had been described in the printed program as an original composition. The young municipal surveyor had no opinion. The clergyman had woken for the fish and was focused on the fish. She said simply that the proportions were slightly off in the right cluster and that whoever had assembled it had worked from a sketch rather than from life, because the sketch would not have shown the way the stems weighted to one side. The table did not follow this. The Duke followed it. He said, "You've drawn it yourself in the program." She said, "I was checking whether I was right." "I was right," Sir Robert said. "I noticed this exchange because the Duke asked a question and I did not know what it was about, which is not an experience I associated with him." The dinner concluded. The Duke found occasion to speak to her again during the general assembly before the carriages, briefly, at the edge of the room for perhaps 7 minutes. She had noticed that the painting above the east fireplace was the work of the same hand as one in the Ashford collection, which she knew from an exhibition catalogue, and she had been trying to confirm whether the acquisition dates matched. He knew, he told her. She thanked him correctly, gathered her gloves, and went to her carriage. Sir Robert said, "I asked him afterward who she was." He said, "Miss Reeve from Aldwick." I said, "I didn't see you speak to her." He said, "That is because you were talking to Mortimer Vane about the railway scheme for the full second half of dinner." I said, "Is that relevant?" He said, "It means you missed half the dinner." Sir Robert said he had considered this remark for some time afterward, because the Duke of Ashford did not typically make remarks of that kind without a specific purpose, and the purpose in this case had become clear. 4 months later, when Miss Reeve had become the Duchess of Ashford without, as far as anyone in the county could trace, any intermediate incident of public note. This is the detail the Duchess corrected at the Calmsley dinner. Sir Robert had believed the 7-minute conversation about the painting was the decisive moment because it was the last one he had witnessed. The Duchess said it was not. She said the decisive moment had been the centerpiece answer during the main course. Specifically, the phrase, "I was checking whether I was right." "I was right," Sir Robert said. "Why that?" She said, "Because it was accurate, and I said it in his company." And he did not respond to it as though accuracy in a woman required some adjustment before it could be received. He received it exactly as it was. Sir Robert told me he had found this description so plain as to be confusing. He said to her, "Is that all?" She said, "It is quite a lot, actually." I have thought about that reply since. It seems to me to say something accurate about what a particular kind of attention means to a person who has spent a number of years in rooms where that attention was not available. I am setting it down as she gave it because she gave it correctly, and the correction mattered.